today. A new corporate phishing expedition against the internet will be stopped, thanks to the internet connecting the dots in time. It ain't getting worse, we're just seeing it more. Your host is Rick Falkvinger, and this is Liberties Report.
This report is presented by Private Internet Access.
Good evening and welcome to Liberties Report, week 22, 2015. The big news of this week was evidently and obviously that EFF blew the whistle on a new trade agreement, as they tend to be called, known as TISA, T-I-S-A, the Trade and Services Agreement, which is supposed to tie the hands behind the backs of national legislatures worldwide as to regards to the internet. Essentially, the TISA agreement is going to outlaw privacy, outlaw net neutrality, and outlaw mandates for open source and free software. Essentially, corporate control over the internet, as is always the game. And alongside TTIP, the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, and TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, one tends to wonder, when does it end? Is there ever a stop to these? And as usual at Liberties Report, it's more important to take a look at the big picture here. The thing is, these agreements have always been going on, and we haven't really known until now about them. We knew about the SOPA, the Stop Online Piracy Act in the US, and shot it down. We knew about ACTA, the so-called anti-counterfeiting trade agreement, and shot it down. And we've only started to learn about this modus operandi of doing backroom deals, tying the hands of national parliaments. Most of us have heard of the EUCD or the DMCA. Most of us have not heard about the WCT, which was the international treaty underlying the DMCA and the EUCD. It's short for the WIPO Copyright Treaty, and it was enacted in 1996, 2 and 5 years before DMCA and EUCD respectively. Most of us have not heard about WPPT, the WIPO Performance and Phonographic Treaty, or possibly Phonograph and Performance Treaty, which again does the same thing. It raises the bar and ties the hands of national parliaments. Most of us have not heard about TRIPS, which underlies not just the World Trade Organization, but severely raises the bar above the Berne Convention about minimum terms, scope, and restrictions for the copyright monopoly, among many other things, which was enacted in 1996. So, while we may feel despair about all the dirt that's starting to come to the surface here, what's important to realize is that this has always been going on, at least for several decades. Or more specifically, since the late 1970s, with the United States starting something called the Advisory Committee on Trade Negotiations, ACTN, which reported directly to the Office of the President at the time. So this has been going on at least since late 1970s, and we've only started to uncover it. The good news is that once we uncover it, we can put enough political pressure on legislative chambers, on individual legislators, and on old media to reverse this bad development. And we've already learned how to do that, and we're already doing that. If you're looking at TTIP, the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, which is essentially TPP but going eastward from the US, where TPP goes westward, you can observe that most politicians in Europe are now starting to look a little uncomfortable in their chairs and saying that, yeah, this is good, but, you know, I think we'll need another year to finalize this, and I didn't really expect that, but there are some problems we still have to sort out. Essentially starting a very slow spiral of death for the entire agreement. ISDS, the so-called Investor State Dispute Settlement resolution or framework, has been one of these things, which essentially says that if you're investing in a country and that country adopts laws that forces you, or prompts you even, to reduce profit expectations, then you have a right to file a lawsuit against that country for reduced profit expectations. Now, Europe and the US have been pushing that kind of crap, frankly, onto agreements in the third world for a number of years. It is only now that they're starting to bite back that this is actually starting to realized as a problem, a huge problem. And frankly, the populace is not taking it. This stuff is in the TTIP and in the TPP, and now being joined by the TISA agreement, TISA, Trade and Services Agreement, being negotiated as part of the World Trade Organization, where TRIPS was also originally negotiated, or Thoughts in Space Agreement, which frankly might be a better reading of the acronym. In any way, yes, things are bad, but the good news is that we are now discovering how bad things are, and better still, we already know that we can do something about it. We're still on the defense. For every bad thing we stop, 9 or 10 pass under our radar. But the good news is that we are discovering how bad things have always been. And we are starting to turn the tide back in the right direction. While that might feel like a tough task, this is not a time to despair. This is a time to realize just how powerful we as grassroots have become. Celebrate that and use all of that collective power to turn the tide back in the right way against these backroom shady deals that have been going on for decades. I'm Rick Falkvinge and this is Liberties Report. Visit our sponsor, Private Internet Access. Good night.
This report is presented by Private Internet Access.
Liberties Report is produced using exclusively free software.